All right, let's get right into it then with our very first speaker. She needs no introduction, a true powerhouse, avid advocate for women's rights and women empowerment. I am, of course, talking about Christelle Colman. She is the current MD at Elite Risk Acceptances and is going to be talking to us today about the power of a professional brand for women. Over to you, Christelle.
Good morning. Thank you, Nani. That's such a lovely introduction. And I am so honored to share the speaker lineup with some of the women today. Some of them are my friends, and I know the content of some of the talks, and they'll be sharing personal experiences. And I think for us to, really relate to a story, often you need to share a little bit about yourself. So that's really where I'm going to be starting my little conversation with you today, and I'm just going to get my presentation ready. So, okay, here we go. Okay, to that, after that bumpy start. So yeah, here we go. If you can just let your mind go to this amazing place. As I said, I'm stepping out of my beautiful apartment into this Mercedes-Benz and driving down the Champs-Élysées past the Eiffel Tower on my way to a work dinner. And as I'm driving, my mind is kind of stuck into a sentence, and it keeps on repeating. How the hell did Clippy from Philippi get here? And that's really the story I want to tell you today, because nothing is always as it seems. I grew up I come from a very sort of disadvantaged background, even though I know I have white privilege, so I don't have too much to complain about. But I come from the dusty streets of Philippi. My parents had a terrible fall from grace, and we ended up in an absolutely desperate situation. In primary school days, we lived in this area which is very close to Crossroads in the Western Cape. We all know that nowadays it's an informal settlement. It didn't look like that at the time, but just to explain to you, in the early 80s. White people didn't live here. We were the only people that were not of color in the area. And if I think back to those days, some of my most overwhelming thoughts are that of being hungry, because I would go to school the whole day and my parents never sent me to school with lunch. And actually, being bitten by fleas. It was really a terrible place for a child to grow up. And things didn't always go well for me from there. So it was quite an experience for me to end up in this place. And I want to take you on this journey and tell you why I believe the power of a professional brand can be so profound. But before we get to the story of Paris and how I actually ended up in this black limousine, I want to take you to something else, which I have never shared with anyone up until today, not even my children or my husband, anyone. So it's quite a moment for me. These are my actual matric results. You'll see that I matriculated in 1990. And something that I do want to point out to you is the matric pass rate at the time. You could pass matric with a 33% pass rate. So I just want to mention this, because we hear on social media all this time about the 30% pluses. In the 1990s and the 1980s, that's how you could get your matric as well. So just something to think about when you see that comment again. But I want to show you my results. So I started my schooling career very strong. I did extremely well. But I became more and more disillusioned because of the circumstances that I found myself in, and changed schools all the time. I went to 9 schools in my school career, and I ended up becoming very disinterested in academics. I read all the time. I always had a book on my desk, and I ended up barely scraping through matric. I got a D average, and an E for my maths. And so on. So I didn't really have an option to go and study after school. I couldn't get a bursary, and of course, my parents couldn't afford to send me to school. But let's get back to the reason to university. Let's get back to the reason why I ended up in Paris. So here we go. So I became the CEO of the local arm of a French company, Europe Assistance. I was the only female CEO in a global group of 38 countries. And I absolutely and most firmly believe that the reason, apart from the fact that I obviously had a track record for starting up and running successful businesses, one of the reasons why they wanted to employ me was because I had quite a strong professional brand in the South African market. And Europe Assistance at the time in South Africa was going through a lot of challenges, and they wanted to change the perception of the brand. So before I even arrived for my interviews in Paris, they knew who I was, and it was an incredibly sort of strong message for me to realize how important this is. And since then, I've invested quite a bit of a bit of time and money into building my own professional brand, and I want to share some of those tips with you today. So I have quite a big reach. I am very active on Twitter. I am on Instagram. I'm on LinkedIn. I am able to mobilize different messages through the different platforms. And I use that for different reasons. I use it to build my company's brand and also my own brand. And I think it's very important that we just stand still on this comment about building my own brand, because what can you do with your own brand? Why is it so important? Well, the reality is, if you make sure that you have a very strong network, you have a responsive network, and whether it is to do a startup or to become better at selling, whatever it is that you sell. So if you work for a brokerage and you want to expand your client base, or if you are someone who works in a professional environment and you want to apply for a new job, there are so many applications of your professional brand. And for me, what happened was, when I was with Europe Assistance, it was always going to be a short-term journey for me, because I wanted to do a high net worth insurance startup. And I knew that by using my own reach into media and social media, I would be able to launch a new brand. I didn't expect it to work as well as it did. And I just want to share some of those stats with you. So Tarina and I, who is my business partner, we launched Elite in 2018. 2019, we had about 4,000 clients. And in the first year of operations, we wrote 100 million rand in gross written premium. 2021, we're already well on our way to 15,000 clients, and we will be doing 400 million rand in gross written premium turnover. And now this is like a really, I show these numbers because it is extremely important to demonstrate how, if you have a responsive network and if people, know who you are and they trust you, you can actually monetize that network. You can tap into it when you launch a new business or you launch a new product. So it's not just about the corporate brand, it's also about the individual's brand. And without a doubt, when we launched Elite, we did it on the back of my LinkedIn profile, and of course Facebook and Twitter as well. And within a matter of probably a month, the entire market knew about Elite, and it cost us almost nothing. So it's a real life case study of how this can work. But let's just talk a little bit about what is a professional brand, what is a personal brand, and the way that I understand this, and the way that it sort of works for me is, it's that essence that stays behind in the room long after you've left. It's what people think about you when you're not around. It's what they say about you when you're not around. And it's also what the perception that people have of you before you enter the room, whether it's a virtual room or a physical room. So it's extremely important that you are aware of this concept of having a professional or a personal brand. It's your reputation wrapped up in media, social media, and your digital footprint. And that's why it's really, really important that we specifically talk about female entrepreneurs. And we are still in Women's Month, and I wish we could get to a place where we don't have to have a Women's Month anymore. But women in South Africa are seriously still on the back foot. Look, South Africa has got a very progressive constitution. We have less of a gap than we have, when we compare ourselves to first world countries. We are very aware of gender and racial disparity. But at the same time, we as women have to work harder at bringing our value to the table. We have to make sure that we put everything that we have into our arsenal to fight for our place in the corporate world. And it's about lack of equal opportunity, and it's about the gender pay gap. Those are two things that I'm so serious about. I have two daughters. We have 4 children. I've got 2 daughters, and it's my dream that one day we will be able to, for our daughters to get into the workplace where they get paid the same salary as their male counterparts, and they get access to the same opportunities. That's not the case at the moment, and it's not something that I'm sucking out of my thumb. The statistics are there, so we know this is the case. So, if you look at female entrepreneurs, it is very easy nowadays to build a professional brand online. In the days when I started out in the early 90s, we still had fax machines. We didn't really have the internet. If I wanted to make a special recipe, I had to phone my friends and get a recipe out of a recipe book. If I wanted to research anything about market, I had to go and get a book from a business school library or anything like that. It was very difficult in those days. If I wanted to build my sales network, I had to do it physically by going to the municipality and getting the earth numbers of. I was a thatch underwriter in my early days of thatched buildings and who the owners are, and going into the telephone directory and getting their names and phoning them up. It was so difficult. Nowadays, we have this incredible thing, which is social media, online marketing. In South Africa, we have 23 million active social media users. We know that happy customers is the best advertising that you can get. And we find that customers do amplify their satisfaction with a brand on social media, so they do their advertising for you. And social media marketing is extremely cost effective. It can be completely free. It really just takes your time and effort to make sure that you understand how to navigate your way around the social media platforms. So I just want to position that. And I want to use an example. I'm going to play you a very short clip of the Women's Equality Party in the UK, and they used email. So remember, if I talk about digital marketing, it's not just about social media and Twitter and LinkedIn and all those things. It's the tools that we have to our availability versus the way it was in the old days. And this little clip is such an incredible case study of what we can use in our daily lives, in our businesses, to grow our brands. And so it's just to demonstrate to you how digital marketing can work. But more importantly, it is Women's Month, and this clip is around the Women's Equality Party in the UK. So just have a look at this clip and enjoy the message that it brings.
The World Economic Forum says that the financial gap between men and women is greater now than at any time since 2008.
Yes. So what a powerful way to just use email to build a message around, whether it's a brand or maybe a cause that you work towards. So I want to tell you something. There are some pitfalls. We're going to talk specifically about social media for the rest of the presentation, and a message can go viral. So I want to tell you about my viral message that happened to me a couple of years ago. So I used to drive a really expensive car, and I actually went to on one of my Paris trips. I went to buy a very nice handbag, and as I stepped out of the shop, I felt so guilty for spending so much money on a handbag. I'd saved up for it. And walking towards a coffee shop to just go and sit down and catch my breath, I realized that I'm paying every month more towards my car than I did for this wonderful handbag. And I decided right there and then that I was going to sell my car and buy a second-hand small car. So it was just about 3 years after, I made this change. It was Sunday afternoon. I had a glass of wine. I just drove back from a friend of mine. I sat down. I thought I need to just tweet about this, or I posted on Facebook about it. Nothing really happened. And then I thought, let me put it onto Twitter. I put it onto Twitter, and it started just running this tweet. You will see, it's still going. It's already like a year, 2 years afterwards. It's already over 500,000 impressions. And thank goodness for me, this was a positive message. When people see this tweet, they take something away from it about me as a person. I care about my financial management. I'm a woman who looks after my own finances. I know a little bit about, looking after my own future, and I'm prudent to an extent when it comes to money. But this could have so easily gone wrong, and that's really the message that I want to leave with you this morning, because tweets can be posted and it can send the wrong message about you. So be very careful of what you put out onto social media. It can so easily go wrong. And we know that there are many speakers, professional speakers, who only focus on this topic of what can go wrong. But I honestly believe that if you are going to be serious about building your professional brand, you just have to have a set of rules around what you never talk about on social media. So first of all, my first rule is, stay away from social media if you've had a few drinks. I don't like talking about religion or politics, because those topics are extremely volatile. And whilst it might, religion, for instance, if you are, if your work or your passion is in the religious environment, then of course it would make sense. Or if you're a politician, it would make sense. But you really can get yourself, especially in South Africa and especially on Twitter, you can get yourself into serious trouble. If you, the other important thing, and this is specifically for the younger generation and specifically around Instagram, I know that it is very enticing to post, yourself on a holiday with a cocktail in a bikini, having fun. Just always think, when you post anything about yourself, any image about yourself in any place or any action or activity that you're busy with, how that would be perceived. Because if you want to build specifically a professional brand, that might not work towards your favor. Nowadays, employers go online and they look at who you are, because most of these profiles are public. So I wanted to give you a few tips around my learnings with social media and building your brand. So first of all, this is the Paris Marathon, which I have done 3 times, and I still can't believe I did it, because I am a terrible runner. But it really made me think about, when I started out my journey on social media, it really is a marathon. It's not a sprint. I remember sitting in front of my Twitter page the first time when I opened it up, and I thought, who the hell is going to want to even look at anything that I have to say? And it's turned out to be one of my biggest assets, the time that I've invested in my professional brand online. LinkedIn is your friend in business. It's where I spend most of my time. And Charlotte Kemp is going to talk to you a bit later today about, she's going to tell us she's got a specific topic that she's going to tackle. But actually, when I met her was when I decided to invest in my LinkedIn profile, and I booked a one-on-one session with her, and she helped me build my LinkedIn page. Because nowadays, I know before I go into a meeting with someone that I don't know, I Google them and I land on their LinkedIn page. It's often the first impression that people have of you. And I'm not going to go into a place of giving you, teaching you about how to set up your LinkedIn page. But one tip that Charlotte gave me was the importance of recommendations. So, it's not those little ticks about your capabilities. You're good in insurance and sales and marketing and all those things. No one really looks at it. But recommendations are very important. So, if you've worked for someone that's got some sort of profile in the market or that has got influence and you've got a good relationship with them, write to them and give them a little bit of an outline of what you want them to say, because it helps when someone gives you a bit of direction. And ask them for a recommendation. You can do it all in LinkedIn. And that really was one of my biggest tips that I've come across around building my my LinkedIn page. And I tell you, when we launched Elite, I've got about 10,000, short of 10,000 connections on LinkedIn. It's all individuals in the industry with influence, and it really made the biggest difference. I have started talking about this a little bit, but I really want to say Twitter is dangerous. It can go very wrong. I've had death threats because of some things that I've posted on Twitter around rejected claims and things. It can easily go into the dark streets of Twitter. So be very careful with Twitter. I often only use it to just amplify press releases and things that I've put out. So, I'm very careful of Twitter. Facebook, I just want to say, is it's very, very it's very powerful to build a personal connection with people. So often, once I've had a meeting with someone that I've never known before, and we really got on well, I'll do a Facebook connection, because it's really a fantastic way for you to keep in contact with what's happening in people's personal lives, especially nowadays when we have so much. We're dealing with COVID. You will probably find out when someone has been ill, when they're dealing with perhaps someone who's passed away, or when it's their child's birthday, or they've just done something amazing, and it gives you that little bit of insight into that person's life to have a deeper conversation and not just about work. So I use Facebook to keep it personal, but also to build those personal connections. And then the last point that I want to make is this thing around real life connections. So, first and foremost, real life connections trump everything. So when we start getting back to a normal life, your professional brand is built also through attending industry events, serving and making yourself available to serve on the various industry bodies, connecting with people in person. Very, very important, and an amazing way to build your network in the industry, and then from there go to the digital connections. But in the world of online meetings, one of the things that I think women do wrong is this thing about not switching your camera on. Every morning I get up, I dress up, and I show up. I always have my camera on. I think it's a terrible excuse to say that you didn't have time to do your makeup and do your hair because we're not having to drive to the office. I know it's not for everyone to get all made up every day, but women need to take their seat at the table. And because men don't have this issue with hair and makeup, they generally just switch on their cameras. And then you have so many times women who sit behind a screen, a photograph, and it's just their voices. We have to connect with each other. We have to keep our relationships and our connections going. And just by seeing someone's face and their expressions, you can build a relationship with that person. Shedi, who's also a speaker today, I've only met in the digital world. I can't wait to meet her in person. But we've managed to build a real friendship because we always have our cameras on. So please don't, allow yourself to not switch your camera on. If just put a lipstick on or use 15 minutes to get yourself ready and make sure that you are present and connected in every single meeting. You never know when that person on the other side of the camera is going to be your future employer, a potential client, or even a friend. stay connected, stay present. I can't stress this enough. Yes, so on to something else, and I just want to leave you with a bit of a positive message before we end off my talk today. So I've got another short fun clip. Sorry.
Listen up, babies. Life's not fair. You get no say in the world you're born into. You don't decide your name. You don't decide where you come from. You don't decide if you have a place to call home or if your whole family has to leave the country. Yeah, it's messed up. You don't decide how the world judges a person like you. You don't decide how your story begins, but you do get to decide how it ends. Yes!
And on that point, I just want to say to you, how your story, from my own personal experience, how your story started doesn't have to mean that's how it ends. And of course, having a professional brand that's successful means nothing if it's not supported by substance. So it all starts with being able to amplify your good reputation, delivering on your job, and what is set out, that what you set out to do. So I would be terrible at being, a spokesperson for building a professional brand if I don't ask you to connect to me. So please, you will find me on Twitter, on Facebook, and on LinkedIn. I invite you to connect with me if you're a young woman in the industry and you want to set up some time to talk to me, or just want to hear more about how to go about this. It's a very short space of time to share all the information. Please get connected with me, and thank you for listening. And I apologize for the rocky start to my presentation. I've done so many of these in this morning. The gremlins just came into my screen. So that's it from me. Thank you very much, guys.